All right, it's time. It's time to put my money where my mouth is. I have been talking mad shit about the Dark Elves forever because they don't. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. They're not a real race. They can't possibly exist without plot armor from CA. And I'm here to settle this once and for all with math. And I'm going to be as generous to the Dark Elves as is possible. All right, we'll be as generous to them as possible. It still doesn't work. So step one. How many elven kingdoms are there? Let's separate them out with blue. We have Krace. 1. Nagaraith. This was before the Sundering, so Nagaraith is where the Dark Elves are from. We have Tiranoc. Down here. Illyrian. Averlorn. Kathik. Yvres. Before Grom the Paunch. Yvres like that. And then Safri. What is down there? I believe this is still Safri. Safri's kind of a weird shape. Then we have Eataine. And Kalidor. Alright, how many kingdoms was that? 5, 5, 10. Great. So there's 10. There's 10 capital, 10 areas, alright? Let us say, before the Sundering, there was 1 billion elves. Let's say that. It's not true. There's no way there was 1 billion elves, but I'll be, like I said, I'll be as generous as possible, and we're still gonna get to the conclusion, I believe. Or if I'm wrong, I just won't release this video, because I'm doing this math live with you people. Alright, so let's pretend, start 1 billion elves. Let's just say that's true. It's not, but pretend. Okay, you know what? I need a canvas, so you are getting blurred. Out of my way. Get out of my way. All right, so we have 1 billion elves across all of Ulthuan, and the colonies, Cool. Now let's assume it's split 10 ways, right? Well, that means each province would have to have, or kingdom, I guess, they're kingdoms, whatever. Doesn't matter. Each kingdom divided by 10 is 100 million elves per province on average. Now, in the book itself, the description says Nagaraith is sparsely populated compared to the neighboring kingdoms. Like not just the neighboring kingdoms, because Eataine is actually probably the most populous, closely followed by Safri. And Yvres, before Grom the Paunch came through, was also kind of chilling. Illyrian has a ton of people in it or whatever. So Nagaraith, to be considered sparsely populated, Nagaraith probably has at least half, I would say, to be considered that. So let's say Nagaraith possibly 50 million elves. Possibly. Okay. Cool. That's still a lot of elves. That's a good amount. And then the Sundering starts to happen. So the Dark Elves group up under Malekith, and they go around, and they fight, and they fight, and they fight. There's thousands and thousands of casualties. And also Nagaraith has a bit of a civil war, because there's Alethanar's clan, which is one of, like, the 3 great clans of Nagaraith, is fighting back against them from Aloran, and then they're gathering up anybody that doesn't agree with Malekith, and Malekith is flaying people. And it's stated throughout the books that over 2/3 of the population of Nagaraith has either fled or died in the torture, in the murders, in the wars, all that stuff. So Nagaraith post-war, 2/3 of 50,000. Oh crap. Let's round up and say 20. There's still 20 million. Somehow there's still 20 million. Again, we started this with 1 billion elves, which is way more than there were, but we're down to 20 million for Nagaraith. So now Nagaraith loses the war. They have 20 million elves left, And as they're losing the war, Malekith, Marathi, and the remaining Dark Elves come up with a last-ditch plan to separate off. Well, actually, they're just trying to destroy Ulthuan at this point. They're kind of like, if I can't have it, no one can. And they start sinking the whole island and a whole bunch of shit. Things go wrong, and instead they accidentally create the Black Arcs, which is just citadels breaking off of Ulthuan with the land itself, and the land becomes a boat, and they end up sailing away. Accidentally at first, but this will become their main plan. They get, in the books it says like 13 citadels. No, this isn't cities. This is citadels. Parts of cities, not the whole thing. It's like if your Capitol building and like the 4 buildings around it separated off and floated away. Not the whole city. Not everyone's living there. So let's be generous and say, of the 13 main cities, let's pretend all of the elves that become the Dark Elves lived in the cities. No one lived in the countryside. All of them are in the cities. That seems a little optimistic, but okay. Now, some of these weren't even cities, they were private residences. So, like, some of these Dark Elf mages just had castles, and they separated those castles off and ran, but those don't have meaningful populations. There's only like 3 big cities. So that's all, we're already giving the Dark Elves a lot of credit here. But, okay, whatever, fine, nah, it's chill. So, they separate off these citadels. The citadels are maybe 1/10 of the city. Maybe. And this is assuming that all Dark Elves are just standing around in a grid-like pattern and not clustered up in like marketplaces or residential quarters or anything. Like, this is assuming way more people are at the Citadel than you would. If Citadel is like 1/10 of a city, optimistically, Dark Elves at sea. Optimistically, we have 1/10 of the population survived when Nagarythe sunk. As the spell had backlash, Nagarythe sunk. Right? No, don't do that. Don't do that. I want the background. So Nagarythe sinks beneath the waves, and they're gone. Now, we have given the Dark Elves the benefit of the doubt at everything possible. And they are going to sea with 2 million Dark Elves. 2 million. That's just not going to work. Because you know what's still in Ulthuan? 900 million elves. Like, how many of them do you think died in the war? Because they didn't get cut up like this. So you start with a billion. Nagarythe had like 50 million or whatever. But that means the other kingdoms all combined had 950 million, somewhere in there. There's still so many of them left. Like, in the war, maybe they got dragged down to 850 million. Let's assume they took 100 million casualties in this war. They didn't, but let's just pretend they did. You still have 850 million normal elves versus 2 million Dark Elves, and then they pursued the Dark Elves into the Cold Lands and like chased them down, and they had to build a city. And a population of 2 million Dark Elves made it to Nagarythe. Okay, cool. All right, part 2, into Nagarythe. So this is where apparently the Black Arcs landed. Remember, we're down here with start of exile, 2 million. Okay, there's 2 million Dark Elves that land on these shores. Cool. Making that smaller so I can fit. Start of exile, 2 million Dark Elves. They do disperse through Nagarythe slowly over time, but for now they start at Nagaron for a bit, make Hargoneth and some of these other things. They do have to constantly hold off assault from the north. That happens as soon as they start landing. They have to clear out monsters and chaos demon hordes that come down through the Iron Mountains. So you do have to maintain a vigil at Grond, and you get into fights several times a year. Then Dark Elves have a main export of sailing through the Sea of Chill and going out to raid or to invade Ulthuan or anything like that. So they're raiders by nature. And on the south side, they have greenskins coming up through the Plain of Spiders to every so often raid and harass them, so they have to defend all those sides. So they're attacked on all sides, plus High Elves, I'll make them blue. High Elves are looking for you guys. And whenever they find you, they do little raids, they burn some shit down. So you're under constant attack from 3 sides. You're exporting people to go raiding, which is not a profession that goes without casualties. And then, in your own society, you have 1 day a year that's mostly celebrated in Harganeth. Like, they're the biggest ones about it. Nah, I can't find... Yeah, Harganeth's over here. They do it every single year. There's a Night of Blood where it's completely legal and fine to just go out and murder anybody that you want to, and everyone in Harganeth takes part in it. Which... Okay, but around the whole country, it's still a holiday, and it's still not illegal for you to go murder people on that holiday. So let's say 1/4 of people participate across the whole thing, because everyone in Harganeth does, and then elsewhere, some people do. You know what? Let's say a 10th. A 10th of people participate in this. That means every year, you lose a 10th of your population to self-murder on a one holiday. Okay, cool. Let's assume that during the raiding and all of the invasions, they maybe take 5,000 casualties a year, maybe. So let's do this. That would be supremely optimistic, considering how many battles they're in all the time. But whatever. So per year. What is 1/10 of that? 200,000 to Kane. That is so fucking many. But like, I don't know. If 1/10 of your people participate in this night that you go out and murder somebody, that's assuming they get the kills. But I suppose only maybe let's say maybe half. Maybe half get the kills. 100%, 100,000 to Kane, then 5,000 to raiding, being raided, north and south defense. Maybe. Okay, cool. What else was there? Oh, yes. There's basic backstabbing and murdering. So every Dark Elf that makes it to old age will have killed probably 3 or 4 of his compatriots, which means you're going to have 3 or 4 babies in your lifetime to even make up for the population deficit you created by murdering your colleagues. And if you didn't murder a bunch of your colleagues, then you probably didn't make it to old age because you probably got murdered. But even that, like, let's ignoring the cultural things of Dark Elves just murdering each other for that. Even with just this Kane holiday and then raiding every year, what would the population turnover have to be? Because you have, let's say, of 2 million, the 2 million that landed, you'd have to have 1 million women. So they would have to have a kid every year. Would be 1 million kids, which they don't. They're elves. They have a kid every, 10 years. So that means every year... Actually, yeah, that is good. They have a kid every 10 years, maybe. Maybe. And that's being optimistic. So let's say that is 100,000... Wait, sorry. A kid every 10 years is 100,000 children a year. Which is pretty much eaten up by that Kane night we were talking about. And being raided. And raiding. And you need to grow this population, so you need to get significantly above that. And then they launch several invasions of Ulthuan. Several invasions of Ulthuan over the course of their history. They lose every single one. Like, it's... How? How? Because this whole time, we're talking about 2 million Dark Elves maybe surviving. Oh, and they're on fucking Nagaroth, which is a tundra wasteland, so they don't even have a ton of food. the food they get is like from either making their slaves do it or raiding ships and stealing their food and stuff. So I don't know. It's not like they have abundant food and resources. Ugh, it doesn't make any sense. And like the High Elves can't take them out, even though the High Elves still have 90% of the population of the starting elves. That's the part that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, it doesn't... We picked 1 billion arbitrarily, which you could see that fractions just decimate this, right? Because if you didn't start with 1 billion, that means this exile isn't 2 million, it's going to be like 1 million, or 500,000, or even 50,000. Because the math doesn't add up. Like, you had 10 kingdoms of the High Elves. You picked one that was described as sparsely populated compared to its neighbors, and that's the one that did the 1v9, split off, formed a nation, and then that nation became a rival to the original host? That doesn't add up. Those numbers don't add up. And don't you War of Vengeance me. Don't, like, the High Elves, to get on an even playing field with the Dark Elves population-wise, the High Elves would have had to lose like 80% of their population. Of their population, not of their soldiers, of the whole population in the war with the Dwarves, which didn't happen, obviously. The Dwarves never made it to Ulthuan. It's not like they murdered a bunch of civilians. So it's just like, if the Dark Elves ever invade the High Elves, which they do several times, the High Elves should just be like, oh, that's cute, and destroy it. Because like, of this 2 million, if you raise an army of 100,000, which would be impressive, that's 1/10 of your population that's running off and never coming back every so often. But it's really, the biggest number is, the biggest two problems for the Dark Elves existing is that stupid holiday of Cain, which can't function for a society. Like, you can't have your population, like, optimistically killing 1/10 of your own population. Optimistically, which in the books it indicates far more people than 1 out of 10 participates, but whatever. Like, it's just, that holiday doesn't work. You can't have a purge type night where everyone goes out and murders, or even 1 in 10 go out and murder, because it's not sustainable, especially when you're talking about elves. Like, if we're talking about Skaven, maybe, because they have, instead of, we're talking about 1 kid every 10 years for the elves, it's like, for the Skaven, it's 8 kids every 4 months. So, no, this shit don't work. It ain't real. Dark Elves ain't real. They're poorly thought out, their society doesn't make any sense, and reading about them makes me angry. Their characters are alright. Their characters' individual stories are pretty good. But they're like, society as a whole just clearly wasn't thought out, and is entirely rule of cool. But I just can't think of them as like a meaningful force in the world. And I'm reading the Elven omnibuses right now, and whenever it's like, Malekith got together this huge army, I just immediately go, from where, dude? From where did all these Dark Elves come from? Because this shit don't make sense. Garbage. It's garbage! They're probably the worst written bad guy faction. And again, their individual characters are really good, and their individual stories are really good. But, like, fundamentally, they don't make any sense as an entire race. Skaven do. Greenskins do, because Greenskins are messed up that, like, when you kill one, their body decomposes into spores, and the spores make more greenskins, so killing them actually just makes more over time. Vampire counts make sense, because the more they die, they can resurrect their own zombies as long as their bodies are in somewhat decent condition. They can just repair them enough to keep them going. And then any of your soldiers that die, they can take those bodies too. So vampires make sense. Chaos is kind of weird. Chaos is a bit hand-wavy. I don't think they're as bad as the Dark Elves, writing-wise, but, you know, it's not great. Chaos just being like, I don't know, there's always more marauders, somehow, and Chaos provides. It's fine. Demons can never be killed, they just get sent back to their realm, and if they ever come back again, then fuck you, idiot. So yeah, I'm not saying the Dark Elves are alone in the poorly written category, but they're towards the bottom. They're towards the bottom. They don't make any fucking sense.
Subscribe, yes.